Hello, everyone. It's this time of the year. The interview season is here, and I'm very excited to do this video that everyone asked me to do every single year, which is an interview with one of our advisors to show you samples of excellent answers to residency interview questions. Before we get started, if you'd like access to our interview prep resources, which include 200 plus interview questions, sample answers to these questions, interview prep guide, and many other resources, sign up through the link I'll leave in the cards above and in the description below. And now let's get started. Hello, William. Welcome to our program.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be here.
The pleasure is ours as well. Can we start by having you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Definitely. So, my name is William, but most people just call me Will. I'm currently in my final year of medical school at the University of Queensland, which is based in Australia, but they also have good relationships with the hospital system in New Orleans, allowing us to really do a lot of rotations there. I grew up in Canada, about an hour from Toronto. I'm sure that if we chatted a little bit longer, you would have noticed my excessive uses of sorries. That's usually what usually gives it away. I attended high school, undergrad, and also my first year of medical school in Canada due to COVID and Australia having closed their borders. But it was really in Canada that I got my first exposure to emergency medicine. And it was a little bit unconventional, but it was actually veterinary emergency medicine that really drew me to the specialty. And then towards the end of my undergrad, I also had the opportunity to work as a research assistant at the pediatric emergency department, which was a great opportunity because that really confirmed my interest in emergency medicine. In both positions, I really loved working as part of a team. I saw how fast paced it was. And I think also, too, there was always a challenge that needed to be overcome, whether that be the undifferentiated patient that came in through the door or the differentiated patient that was really sick and required urgent treatment. Fast forward a little bit, from undergrad, I completed medical school in 3 countries. So year one in Canada, years 2, 3 were in Australia, and majority of my year 4 was in New Orleans, Louisiana. So I've really been exposed to all of these healthcare systems, which is, I think, going to be an asset before I start my medical residency, hopefully with your program. I also think that family is a really important part of who I am, an important part of my life. So I'll share a little bit more about them. Both of my parents immigrated from Portugal to Canada during their teens, and my brother is also a paramedic. So I think emergency medicine runs in our family, I think.
That's amazing. Now, you got multiple options to apply to different programs. What made you interested in our program?
Yeah, so I'm really glad that you asked me this question because it gives me an opportunity to share why I'm really excited to be here, especially more compared to even the other interviews that I've had the opportunity to interview with. And I think the short answer to that question is that I think your program specifically really aligns well with not only my professional goals, but also my personal goals. I've had the opportunity to research a lot of programs and also better understand what's important to me. I think personally, my partner also has an interview here at that hospital. And throughout medical school, we've really been an important part of each other's support system. And it's really important to me that I think we maintain that. I think that it's going to be something that I'm going to benefit from throughout medical school. I think being also within a drivable distance from my family back home in Canada is also something that's really important to me. Being able to take the car on a weekend and just visit, my parents or attend special occasions. I think that that's something that stands out compared to like other programs that are a little bit further from the border where I had to fly. With regards to my professional goals, I also have an interest in possibly pursuing a critical care fellowship after residency. And I know that the program has a heavy focus on critical care, not just as a level 1 trauma center, but also even as a transfer center from medically ill patients as well. I know that any program will allow me to apply to critical care fellowships. But I also think that it's really important that I feel comfortable to pursue those fellowships and prepared for that. And I think that that's something that separates your program compared to other programs. I also think that another important element that really drew me to your program was also seeing how the residents interacted with each other, had the opportunity to attend a few virtual meet and greets, and also just like following the social media, the program social media site. And I was able to appreciate, how the residents got along with each other. And I think that's really important because, a lot of programs out there will throw around the buzzword of like wellness, and they'll have wellness days and they'll have wellness activities. But for me, I think that wellness really stems from like your day-to-day activities. And I think that a large part of that is who you surround yourself with, whether that be the residents and the attendings and the staff, is I think really important. And I see myself being part of that at your program compared to possibly other programs. I definitely think that I would get along with my co-residents and everyone at that hospital because of the environment that I think you guys have created over, several years, perhaps.
Yeah, indeed. That's actually one of the things that makes our program unique is that collegial environment, and we try to keep that by selecting people who fit with our team because being happy at your workplace and coming to see your friends, not necessarily just your coworkers, is definitely a priority for us.
100%. I really do agree with that. I think also too, like I've had the opportunity to talk with a lot of program directors and APDs throughout this whole interview trail and just researching more about programs. And the thing that keeps coming up again and again is the fact that, program directors want residents that would genuinely be happy and are excited to go to work every day. Those are the residents that are going to succeed the most, and which is why it's really important to me that I sort of pick a program that aligns well with my personal but also my professional goals, and why I think I'm just really excited to be here today.
That's amazing. And as you know, we get hundreds of applicants each year. What would make you a good fit for our program? What makes you stand out from other applicants?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think one of the most challenging aspects of possibly residency and even medical school is transitioning from one setting to another, from one hospital to another, or transitioning from one rotation to another. And I think and I expect the transition from medical student to a resident role is also going to be a challenging aspect. However, I've also demonstrated that I was able to successfully adapt in all those transitions from Canada to Australia to back to New Orleans. So I think that that's something that uniquely separates me compared to other people's, is that I've demonstrated that ability to adapt to those different environments as well. And I think that it goes past even just adaptability, but also I think it's about how you perform in a clinical setting. Having had the opportunity to practice in a large emergency department in New Orleans and even in Australia, I think that I also had a lot of responsibilities and opportunities to showcase my specific skill set compared to perhaps other people. So for example, in my role as a medical student, I was able to juggle the many responsibilities that a resident is going to have. For example, being able to manage multiple patients at once, keeping track of the results as they come in, making sure that the patient is continuously updated and that you are able to disposition patients is, I think, something that splits my experience in medical school compared to others, is that I was given that opportunity for, I guess, leadership compared to possibly other applicants. Considering your program specifically, and also why I chose to apply to this specific program, why I'm really excited to be here, is the fact that also our interests align in that I hope to possibly pursue research and academics and practice in an academic setting compared to possibly other applicants that have more goal-oriented towards a community practice afterwards. I've had a lot of research opportunities throughout my past medical school that I really hope to be able to apply as a resident and possibly even as an attending moving forward.
Amazing. And that brings me to my next question is, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years after you graduate from residency?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I've sort of like touched on that previously, but I'm happy to go into a little bit more detail because I do think it's such an important reason about why I chose to apply to your specific program. Based on my positive experiences of working in the MICU throughout medical school, especially my fourth year, I'm hoping to explore my interest in critical care a little bit further and also possibly pursue a critical care fellowship based on these positive experiences. One thing that I really enjoyed about that critical care rotation was that it offered me a little bit more of continuity of care that you don't really get to see in the emergency department without having to sacrifice the acuity of those patients. I was able to really actually see them respond to therapy and also have to make changes. And it also offers a unique challenge that we don't really see in the emergency department, which was the requirement to make, I guess, like ongoing changes to the patient's treatment plan. And whether that be, for example, narrowing their antibiotic coverage to culture sensitivities, whether that be working towards extubating the patient, assessing their fluid status, those sorts of things that you don't really see in the emergency department just because they don't get to see that continuity of care is something that did intrigue me about the specialty. But I also think, too, why I'm interested in that is because there's such a large overlap between emergency medicine and critical care. I think that one of the reasons that really also drew me to your program was that I was able to, I guess, explore that interest in a little bit more detail compared to other programs that don't have that critical care focus. So yeah, and I also think too, like I was talking to one of the residents actually yesterday in the virtual meet and greet, and they sort of also told me that because there's so many fellowship trained faculty within the program, I would be able to also explore other interests perhaps that I don't even know of yet, like EMS or even ultrasound. So I think that those are things that are really important as well as I'm looking for programs. In terms of like other career goals, I think that I would see myself practicing in more of like an academic or an urban setting. I think that it allows me to pursue research projects, but also I think it would allow me to be able to teach and even learn from some of the medical students at the affiliated like medical school. That's always something that I've really been interested in. And yeah, in terms of setting.
And that's the kind of applicants we hope to recruit. People who are
Yeah.
interested in teaching the next generation of physicians, doing research, and having a larger impact in addition to taking care of patients. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you about any weakness that you think you would like to improve on over the next few years.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And I think one of the most challenging aspects for me personally was transitioning from one hospital setting to another, in which case I have to meet the expectations of different attendings that I worked with. For example, in Australia, I think that there was less so of a focus of medical students presenting to attendings. It was usually something that the upper years or the interns or the residents usually did to the attendings. However, when I moved to New Orleans, there was a focus and a shift in medical students practicing that skill, which was something that I wasn't used to. However, having recognized that that was something that I wanted to improve, I was able to take a lot of active steps towards meeting that goal. So, firstly, I was able to recognize it. Then I was able to convey that goal. I was then able to convey that goal to the attending on shift and say that that was something that I was hoping to practice or a skill that I was hoping to improve. I also took several measures towards achieving that goal. So, for example, I was able to create templates that helped keep my presentations a little bit more organized, especially for patients that tend to be some poor historians and seem to bounce from place to place. And that was something that I really improved. Then I was able to take the feedback that I got from the attending and I was able to implement that and also remember that, okay, this attending likes this specific order for things versus this attending who prefers to hear past medical history first in a presentation and just adapting to that. That was something that I worked towards improving as I recognized as it was a skill that any emergency medicine resident would have to have. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I had perfected that skill early on.
Amazing. I'm sure throughout your multiple rotations and experiences in emergency medicine, you have encountered some difficult patients. Tell me about a difficult patient story you had and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I think that a difficult patient encounter that really comes to my mind was on my EM rotation. And it was a patient who was requiring dialysis but wanted to leave against medical advice. And I think that the challenging aspect of that situation was that there was a little bit of discordance between what I wanted or what I thought was best for the patient and what the patient had wanted. And I thought that the patient would benefit from an admission to hospital, would benefit from dialysis, but the patient did not feel the same way and wanted to leave. Um, in these types of situations, I think that it's really important to take a step back in order to move two steps forward. I think it's important that we don't make any assumptions and we try to ask more questions to better understand the patient's perspective. And after doing so, it was clear that the patient wanted to go home, not because they didn't want to get dialysis, but because they had a dog at home and they'd been in the emergency department for several hours and there was no one to take care of their dog. Having understood that and better understanding the reasons of why they wanted to leave, we were sort of able to make a plan that didn't compromise the patient physician relationship or was at the expense of me establishing rapport with the patient. So the patient was able to leave against medical advice. However, we had a plan in place that when he did come back, majority of his workup was completed and we could expedite the process of commencing him on dialysis. I think that if we had approached this situation a little bit differently and we didn't try to understand the patient's perspective, I don't know if that patient would have ended coming back or returning to hospital for dialysis just because of the fact that they wouldn't have trusted us or because we lost that rapport with the patient. So, yeah, I think that in those specific types of situations, it's important to take a step back and ask ourselves, what does the patient want and why do they want?
Exactly, that's spot on. And another question I had, that's actually my last question, which is,
Okay.
have any academic regrets? Is anything, if you have to go back in time, would you change anything in your career?
Yes, great question. Again, I think that this whole application process has been very reflective. And also, having graduated, I think that it have almost graduated. I think that it's also had a lot of opportunities to look back. I think that one regret that I really had was the fact that I wasn't as involved in many leadership opportunities throughout medical school, whether that be affiliated with the medical school or even like professional organizations throughout emergency medicine. I wish that I actively pursued that for a few reasons. I think that number one, they would have contributed to my support system. I think that I would have met a lot of like-minded individuals, and I think that they could have they would have contributed to my support system. I think also too, it would have allowed me to improve a lot of skills and make connections that could have benefited my professional career as well. So that's something that I definitely wish to do differently. It wasn't till the end of my medical school or recently that I was really able to attend a lot of research conferences, not just as a presenter, but also just attending these conferences for educational purposes. I really saw that there was such this sense of connection and sense of belonging in these professional organizations that I hoped and wished to become a part of. And I think that another goal that I had based on this was the fact that I hope to become more involved in leadership opportunities, whether that be hospital committees in residency or even these leadership opportunities. I hope to explore that in a lot more, give it a chance.
Amazing. Any questions for me?
Yes. I've actually had a lot of opportunities to ask questions to the previous interviewers. But one question that I had was I know that there's actually going to be changes to the emergency medicine board exam. It's going to be shifting from, I believe it's an oral based exam to a simulation based exam. And I was wondering how your program specifically would sort of account for those changes in board exam. Are there going to be changes to the curriculum?
So we actually have a simulation center, and even before that change, our residents are very involved in that. We have faculty who routinely do actually weekly sessions using different models and teaching residents through these different scenarios. So already we have that in place, but we will probably have residents spend more time and even have the ability to go and do these simulations on their own or with their co-residents if they wanted to.
Gotcha. No, I think that that's really great. I think that perhaps like a lot of these more smaller community programs, they lack that resource. So that's definitely, I'm glad that that resource is available to the residents and it's something that's actively being implemented into the curriculum. Do I have an opportunity for one more question,
Yeah, of
if
course.
you wouldn't mind?
Of course.
Yeah. Can you share some more information about the sign out culture? I think that that's something that really separates a lot of programs in terms of that. And I was hoping that you could speak to that.
Yeah, of course. So the way it works in our program is that 1 hour before the shift ends, the resident who's in the emergency department can do not take more patients. So
Okay.
they try to finish as many patients as they have, and once it's like 5-10 minutes before their shift end, one of or multiple of the other residents can take the different patients they have. So if
Gotcha.
one of the incoming residents on their shift they have 0 patients, they might take 2 of your patients, while somebody else take 3, and they kind of divide the patients among them. So that's generally the way it works.
Gotcha. No, I'm really glad to hear that because I think that that's also a huge part of like again that wellness thing, which is that sign out is there's time dedicated to that, and that residents don't have to stay past their shift to do sign out. I know that some other programs they have an extra hour for that specific purpose, which I guess can sometimes be challenging balancing, all of your other clinical tasks that need to be done during the shift and also trying to juggle sign out at the same time. So that's really good to hear.
Exactly. Well, William, it was very nice having you on this interview, and I wish you best of luck.
Yeah, once again, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here, and hopefully, I was able to share that excitement with you today.
I definitely felt that.
Perfect.
So that was an amazing interview, Will. So for our viewers, we're gonna go over each of these questions, give you some comments and hints because you saw the sample answers. It's nice to go into what would make a good answer and why Will mentioned these points and my view on that, because you will see not two single people agree on the exact same style and same
100%.
template for a residency interview. Before we get started with that, if you have any questions about the interview process, feel free to reach out to us at info@themagia.com. If you need to do a mock session with Will or any of our other advisors, we have 80 plus advisors now, IMGs, US grads, DOs, and MDs. So you get to pick whoever you want to work with. And the best part is, if you don't like it after the first hour, we will let you give you your money back. So it's literally risk-free. But the most likely scenario is that you will upgrade to more hours because you will find so much value from them. So the most important thing is the overall vibe. I always tell applicants about that, well, is what am I getting from this applicant besides just their answer? And there are a lot of studies that talk about body language and the kind of the overall vibe that I'm getting from the person beside just the language of the text that they say. And the vibe I get from you is excited. That's someone
Yes.
who's really interested about this program, and that, to the surprise of multiple applicants, might be more important than your actual answers. You need to really show me that you're very excited to be here, you're happy, you demonstrated that through your knowledge about the program. You told me multiple things about the program that I know that this person have done some research and they're showing up to the interview really interested, wanting to leave impression, and they've done their homework. And you have to do that for every single program. You should not
Yeah.
only do that for your top program. This is not, some special personal statement you're writing for them. You have to perform on that level for literally every single program. So learn about the program. You mentioned examples that I always recommend to do, which is I talk to residents in the virtual hour. If you've done rotation at that place, bring it up, because guess what? You might have not rotated with this person on your rotation, and it might be buried somewhere in your CV and they didn't have the chance to read your CV. So they might not know you even rotated here. So bring up these things on your, through the different questions that will be asked. And one of the applicants I was prepping one day, my main feedback to her was that she was not excited. It was just very monotonic voice, body language not moving. I can feel zero excitement. And her answers were good, but if I can't feel that energy, it might not reflect positively. It's not, you have to do something extraordinary, but you just make sure you feel excited and you transform that excitement. Record yourself on Zoom. That's an easy way. Record yourself on Zoom and see, are you able to tell, or your parents or your sibling, to feel that there is that energy. So that's very important. The background, the lighting, and I have detailed videos about that, so I'm not going to go through them here. Now, the first question, they tell me about yourself. The most important question, and again, I have multiple videos about each of these questions actually. I want to touch base on the points that Will mentioned and why they're important. Telling a little bit about your background is very important because I want to see the context of this person, where they came from. Are there any special things about them? Because guess what? They might remember Will by, oh, he's the guy from Canada who did med school in Australia. That might be their connection to you. Because at the end of the day, there will be so many applicants with so many amazing publications and research and rotations, and you need to kind of stand out somehow. And your background might be the one. I like he mentioned a fun fact about Canadians and way to pick from an accent or from the way they say certain things. Very, very light humor and not excessive, because I actually got asked about that. And we have Dr. Vias, who I interviewed, who is the former IM Harvard PD. He talks about humor, and that's a very popular point in that video, which is it's dangerous if you go too excessive. But the way he mentioned it was very light and would not harm or hurt or bother anybody. So be mindful about that. It's nice if you have a nice touch, but don't go too far with that. Another important thing he mentioned is strength point. I see multiple applicants who talk about, tell me about yourself, as just a personal background. No, they tell me you're now in a very high-end job interview. So you need to sell yourself even in the tell me about yourself, because you might not get that opportunity again. So he mentioned he did rotations in the US. He said he almost spent a year in the US. That's a huge selling point for a PD. Why? Because this person knows the system. Even though they graduated from an Australian medical school, they spend half of their clinical time in the country they want to practice in. And you might not have a year of electives in the US, but if you're an IMG who have done multiple rotations, bring that up. Bring it as part of the story. Don't list it as a CV 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring it as part of the story that, after medical school, I was interested in coming to the US. So I spent 3 months doing rotations in here. I've done this and that, just like highlights. You're not going to go into the details. If they want details, they can ask you. But here, you're just talking about highlights of these things. If you, as an applicant applying to the manager cycle, don't miss the interview prep resources we have for you. It has interview prep questions. It has questions you ask to PDs and other faculties and residents. It has sample answers, written sample answers, resources of multiple other videos you can watch like this, and interviews actually interviewing applicants and giving them feedback about their performance. All these are fully free. You can download them by clicking the link I'll leave in the description of this video. And again, if you need help one-on-one with a matched resident in the US, you can schedule a session with Dr. Will, with our other advisors. We have 80 plus advisors, IMGs, US grads. We have advisors from all specialties, and you get to pick who you want to work with. And if you don't like it, we'll give you your money back. That's how much we trust the value we provide to you.
You can also mention that you sort of want to turn things into a positive. So, emphasize that you have all of this clinical experience from different countries, and you worded it as this is an asset rather than perhaps a weakness, that you have that experience that you could bring with you into residency training, and that's something that sets you apart from other applicants in a good way.
Exactly. That's a very, very good point, because if you're someone who, let's say, did medical school in India and they were able to manage 50 patients because of the high volume and not many physicians to patient ratio, that's something you need to bring up, even in your tell me about yourself. But again, the tell me about yourself, the whole answer needs to be 1.5 minutes, max 2 minutes. So you need to consolidate things, make them concise, and present the best version of you. And that version, as I say in multiple videos, will change based on the program. A program that values a lot of research, maybe research should jump up in the tell me about yourself, compared to a community program, more community work, more volunteering. So tailor it based on the program. And Will did an amazing job with that, talking about the strength point. Also interested in the specialty, I highly recommend you mention a glimpse of that. Don't go into the details of the details, but mention it's part of your story. It's part of who you are. It's part of why you're here, is because you're interested in EM, in the specialty you're applying to. So that's important to talk about very briefly. And then I leave it up to the applicant and Will Wallet to present himself in a certain way. He's a family person. He cares about that. He cares about the relationship between with people, because that's what I would get, listening to this conversation, and that is a positive thing. People value that. Will, what's your thoughts? Why did you say that?
Yeah, I also think too that you want to have every opportunity to sort of connect with your interviewer. And I sort of try to do that in a few different ways. If they have traveled to Canada, Australia, then that's a connection that you can make with them because you've been to that same country with them, whether that be a vacation or whatever. Then family oriented people or interviewers, a lot of people are family oriented. And if you share the same values as the interviewer, then they're more likely to remember you in a positive way because you built those connections with them. And they don't have to be very conscious. These are very small connections and subtle that you can mention. If I were to do things over again, I think I even might have mentioned my dog because, majority of people in the US have dogs, and that's such a good connection point that you can allow the interviewer to sort of shift focus a little bit and establish rapport, break the ice, and they'll ask you, oh my gosh, what type of dog do you have? And bang, you transitioned from a formal interview to more of a conversational, subtle opportunity that broke the ice.